Growing up in a middle-class family in suburban Chicago, my life was pretty straightforward. My dad, Tom, spent 30 years on the police force before retiring, and my mom, Sarah, still works as a secretary at Lincoln Elementary. They gave me everything they could, but we were never wealthy. I'm Tasha Mitchell. Well, I was before I became Tasha Reynolds. After graduating from college with an accounting degree, I landed a job at Anderson & Partners, a mid-sized accounting firm. The pay was decent, the work was steady, and I thought that would be my life. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. Then came that rainy Tuesday in October when I literally bumped into Marcus outside Starbucks. I was rushing to get my morning coffee before work, and he was heading to some important meeting. My coffee spilled all over his obviously expensive suit, and I wanted to die right there. "I'm so sorry," I started dabbing at his jacket with napkins. "I'll pay for the dry cleaning, I swear." Instead of getting angry, he laughed. "Don't worry about it. Though you could make it up to me by having dinner with me tonight." That dinner turned into another, and another. Marcus was different from anyone I'd dated before. He was the son of James and Victoria Reynolds, owners of Reynolds Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Midwest. But he never made me feel less than him. He loved that I came from a real family, as he called it. That all changed when he took me to meet his parents at their mansion in Lake Forest. I'll never forget Victoria Reynolds looking me up and down like I was something she'd found stuck to her shoe. "So, Tasha," she said, swirling her wine glass, "Marcus tells us you're an accountant?" "Yes, I am," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "How practical," she said with a thin smile. "And your parents?" When I told her about my dad being a retired cop and my mom a school secretary, you'd think I'd said they were professional criminals. James Reynolds barely looked at me during dinner, speaking only to Marcus about work. When he proposed 3 months later, I said yes without hesitation. His parents attended our wedding with frozen smiles and stiff congratulations. I thought I could win them over with time. I thought love would be enough. After our honeymoon in Bali, Marcus and I moved into his luxury apartment in downtown Chicago. The place was bigger than my parents' entire house, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. I felt like I was living in a dream. 2 months after we married, I discovered I was pregnant. Marcus was ecstatic, spinning me around our massive living room when I told him. Even Victoria and James seemed to soften a little at the news, though Victoria couldn't resist saying, "Well, at least the child will have good breeding on one side." Our son, James Jr., Marcus insisted on naming him after his father, was born on a snowy December morning. The moment I held him, nothing else mattered, not Victoria's constant criticisms, not the whispers at Reynolds Industries parties about the accountant who married the boss's son. JJ, as we called him, was perfect. Those first 2 years were actually good. Marcus took to fatherhood like a natural, coming home early to play with JJ, reading him bedtime stories, taking us both to the park on weekends. He was thriving as financial director at Reynolds Industries, and I worked part-time from home as an accountant while taking care of JJ and our home. Victoria and James might not have liked me, but they doted on their grandson, showering him with expensive gifts and demanding regular visits. But somewhere around JJ's 3rd birthday, things started to change. Marcus began coming home later and later, always with the same excuse, "Big project at work, honey." You wouldn't understand. The man who used to rush home to see his son now barely made it for bedtime. Then came that Thursday when Victoria showed up unannounced at our apartment, her Hermes scarf perfectly arranged, despite the wind outside. "Would you care to explain," she said, walking in without waiting for an invitation, "why you weren't at the company's annual gala last night?" I stared at her, confused. "What gala?" "Don't play dumb, Tasha. The Reynolds Industries anniversary gala. Every executive and their wife was there, except you." My stomach dropped. I didn't know about any gala. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Marcus said you weren't feeling well." "Are you telling me my son lied?" I waited up that night, sitting in our dark living room until Marcus came home at 11:30. He loosened his tie as he walked in, stopping short when he saw me. "Why didn't you tell me about the gala?" I asked quietly. He sighed, pouring himself a scotch. "Look, Tasha, let's be honest. You wouldn't have fit in. You're too simple for these events. The other executives' wives, they know how to carry themselves. They can discuss art and wine and summer homes in the Hamptons. What would you talk about? Your dad's police stories? Your mom's adventures in the school cafeteria?" I felt like he'd slapped me. "I'm your wife, Marcus. You're supposed to be proud of me, not ashamed." I was proud, Tasha. When we were dating, your simplicity was charming. But I'm the financial director now. I need a wife who can be more. I went to bed crying that night, telling myself he was just stressed from work, that things would get better. But deep down, I knew something had broken between us, something I wasn't sure could be fixed. It was a Tuesday when my world fell apart. Marcus had texted that he was working late again, and I was doing my usual cleaning routine around the apartment. When I got to his home office, I noticed his laptop was open on his desk, screen still bright. I'd never snooped before, I trusted him, despite everything. But something made me pause this time. Maybe it was the way the screen showed his email was open, or maybe I was just tired of all the lies. I sat down at his desk, and that's when I saw it, an email thread with someone named Sophia Loran. My hand shook as I started reading. There were hundreds of messages between them, going back months. Sophia was apparently a new marketing executive at Reynolds Industries, hired about a year ago. As I scrolled through their correspondence, my stomach turned. "Had dinner with the village idiot again," Marcus had written. "God, I can't believe I have to go home to her." Sophia's response, "Poor baby. Don't worry, I'll make it all better tomorrow." They talked about me like I was a joke, the simple-minded wife who didn't know her husband was sleeping with someone else. There were pictures of jewelry he'd bought her, weekend trips they'd taken while he'd told me he was at business conferences. I stayed up all night, copying everything to a USB drive, printing key emails, taking screenshots. When Marcus finally came home at 7 a.m., his shirt wrinkled and his tie loose, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the evidence spread out in front of me. "Care to explain?" I asked, holding up one of the printed emails. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" He laughed, actually laughed. "Come on, Tasha. Did you really think you were enough? Sophia is everything you're not, sophisticated, sexy, exciting. When's the last time you even tried to look good for me? I've been taking care of our son while you've been screwing around." "Look," he said, pouring himself a coffee like we were discussing the weather, "here's how this is going to work. You'll stay my wife, on paper. It's better for my image at the company. Sophia understands. And hey," he added with a nasty grin, "maybe I'll even find time for you occasionally. If you're lucky." I ran to JJ's room, my hands shaking as I threw some clothes into a backpack. JJ was still sleeping, clutching his favorite teddy bear. I gently woke him up. "Baby, we're going to visit Grandma and Grandpa for a while, okay?" Marcus leaned against the doorframe, watching us. "You'll be back. Where else could you possibly go?" I picked up my son, grabbed the backpack and my purse with the USB drive, and walked past Marcus without a word. Through tears, I drove to my parents' house. Mom opened the door in her bathrobe, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. The divorce papers arrived 3 days after I left. Victoria Reynolds personally delivered them to my parents' front door, wearing a satisfied smirk. "I always knew you weren't good enough for my son," she said, handing me the envelope. I'm just glad he finally realized it too. But what came next was worse than anything I'd imagined. Marcus wasn't just filing for divorce, he was suing for full custody of JJ. His lawyer filed papers claiming I was an unfit mother, painting a picture of me that was completely false. "Your Honor," Marcus's expensive lawyer said during our first hearing, Mrs. Reynolds has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior over the past year. She drinks heavily, creates scenes of jealousy without cause, and has become unstable. Thank God I'd saved all that evidence. When my lawyer presented the email correspondence between Marcus and Sophia, showing his infidelity and his cruel comments about me, the judge's expression changed. The timestamps on the emails proved I hadn't been creating scenes. I hadn't even known about the affair until I found those messages. So, Mr. Reynolds, the judge said, reviewing the evidence, you claim your wife is unstable, yet these emails show you were the one deceiving her, gaslighting her? Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his expensive suit. The judge awarded me primary custody of JJ, with Marcus getting every other weekend and substantial child support payments. I went back to work full-time at my accounting firm, while Mom and Dad helped with JJ. They were amazing, turning their retirement years into full-time grandparent duty without a single complaint. We settled into a routine. It wasn't luxury living anymore, but it was honest and peaceful. Then came that Saturday morning when a black Range Rover pulled up in front of my parents' modest house. Marcus stepped out, and with him was Sophia, tall, blonde, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I'm here to see my son, Marcus announced, pushing past me into the house. Sophia followed, her nose wrinkled as she looked around our living room with its worn but comfortable furniture. Oh my God, she laughed, picking up one of Mom's cherished family photos. This place is literally a dump. Like an actual kennel. Watch your mouth, I warned her. She turned to Marcus. Baby, you can't let your son stay in this hovel. And these old people? She gestured toward my parents, who stood shocked in the doorway. They belong in a ditch somewhere, not raising a Reynolds heir. Get out, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Both of you, get out of my parents' house right now. Or what? Marcus sneered. You know what, Tasha? I'm done playing nice. I'm going to take JJ, and I'm going to destroy you. You think you won in court? Just wait. I shoved them both toward the door. Get out. Come on, baby, Sophia purred to Marcus. This place probably has fleas anyway. As they drove away, I hugged my parents tight. Mom was crying, and Dad looked like he wanted to punch something. But watching that Range Rover disappear down our street, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. The next night, Dad found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a cold cup of coffee. You know, sweetheart, he said, sitting down across from me, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Remember Mike Sullivan? He worked with me on the force. Now he's a private investigator. Real thorough guy, knows how to dig deep without leaving traces. I thought about Sophia's smug face, about her cruel words about my parents, about all the nasty emails she kept sending me. Just that morning, she'd commented on my LinkedIn profile photo, look at this pathetic wannabe. Can't even afford decent clothes anymore? Marcus wasn't any better. His latest email had read, every time I pick up JJ and see you in that dump, I remember why I upgraded. Enjoy playing poor with your cop daddy. How much does Mike charge? I asked Dad. 2 days later, I was sitting in a small office downtown with Mike Sullivan, a gruff man with kind eyes who'd known me since I was a kid. Weeks passed. I focused on work and JJ, trying to ignore the constant stream of harassment from Marcus and Sophia. Then Mike called. You need to come to my office, he said. You're going to want to see this in person. The file he handed me was thick. First off, he said, Sophia Loren isn't her real name. She's using her sister's identity. Her real name is Carla Larson. As I read through the file, my hands started shaking. Before working at Reynolds Industries, Sophia had been an escort, moving from rich man to rich man, living off their money until they got tired of her or discovered her small-time scams. She'd had different names in different cities, always disappearing just before things got too hot. But what she was doing at Reynolds Industries was far worse. Look at these bank transfers, Mike pointed out. She's been siphoning money from company accounts, small amounts that wouldn't raise red flags. And these emails? He showed me screenshots. She's been selling company information to your in-laws' biggest competitors. Product launches, merger plans, everything. I sat back, my mind racing. The perfect, sophisticated Sophia Loren was nothing but a con artist. And she'd gotten her hooks into not just my husband, but the entire Reynolds empire. There's one more thing, Mike said, pulling out another folder. Remember that big deal Reynolds Industries lost last month? The one that cost them millions? Sophia sold the bid information to their competitor 3 days before the deadline. I gathered all the evidence carefully, making multiple copies. But I didn't make a move. Not yet. Because now I knew something Sophia didn't. Timing is everything. The call from Victoria came on a Wednesday morning. Her voice was as cold as ever. Tasha, James's 60th birthday party is this Saturday, she said, like she was scheduling a root canal. While we'd prefer to keep this a family-only affair, JJ should be there for his grandfather's birthday. And since he's too young to come alone. She let the sentence hang there. Just remember, you're only being invited as JJ's escort. Try to stay in the background and not embarrass anyone. The party starts at 7. James Reynolds' 60th birthday party was exactly as ostentatious as you'd expect. The mansion was decked out in gold and crystal, with waiters carrying champagne on silver trays. I felt every judgmental stare as JJ and I walked in. "Oh, you came," Victoria said, her smile tight. "Well, JJ darling, come give grandmother a kiss." I stood awkwardly by the appetizer table, watching my son being paraded around like a show pony. The other guests either ignored me or whispered behind their hands. I clutched my large purse containing Mike's file, waiting. Then Marcus walked in with Sophia on his arm. She was wearing a red Valentino dress that probably cost more than my car, diamonds dripping from her ears. "Everyone," Marcus announced, clinking his glass. "I have an announcement to make." He pulled Sophia closer. "I'd like you all to meet my future wife, Sophia Loren. She'll be joining the Reynolds family officially next spring." Victoria rushed forward to embrace her. Finally. A woman worthy of the Reynolds name. Harvard educated, from a wonderful family. Unlike some people, James added, shooting me a look. Sophia preened under their attention. "I just feel so blessed to be joining such an esteemed family. And I promise to be the kind of wife Marcus truly deserves." That was my cue. I stood up, my hand steady as I pulled out the file. "Speaking of what people deserve," I said loudly, "I have a few things to share about the future Mrs. Reynolds." "Tasha," Marcus warned, "don't make a scene." I pulled out the first document. "Tell me, Sophia, or should I say Carla Larson? How's your sister feeling about you stealing her identity?" The color drained from Sophia's face. "What is she talking about?" Victoria demanded. "Oh, did she not mention that she's been living under her sister's identity? The real Sophia Loren is a schoolteacher in Minnesota. This woman," I pointed at her, "is Carla Larson, former escort and con artist." "She's lying," Sophia shrieked, but I was already laying out the evidence, photos, bank statements, police reports. "And here's my personal favorite," I continued, pulling out more documents. "Bank transfers showing how she's been stealing from Reynolds Industries. And look at these emails, she's been selling your company's secrets to Wagner Manufacturing and Collins Corp. For months." James Reynolds snatched the papers from my hands. "The Wagner deal, the Collins merger, it was you?" "I can explain," Sophia stammered, backing away from Marcus's thunderous face. "The real Carla Larson," I said, enjoying every moment, "has quite a history. 7 different cities, 7 different wealthy men, 7 different scams. Looks like Reynolds Industries was going to be number 8. The room had gone deadly quiet. I watched their faces change as they read through the evidence, Marcus's confusion, Victoria's horror, James's growing rage. And Sophia, her perfect mask cracking as her house of cards, came tumbling down. The elegant birthday party dissolved into chaos within minutes. James Reynolds's face had turned an alarming shade of purple as he read through the evidence. "Get out," he roared at Sophia, who was still trying to stammer excuses. "Get out of my house before I have you arrested right here." "James, darling," she attempted, reaching for his arm. "These are all lies. I can explain everything." "Explain?" He shook the documents at her. "Explain how you cost us the Wagner deal? That contract was worth $20 million. And Collins? They were our biggest competitor, and you've been feeding them everything." Victoria, who'd been quietly reading through the escort service records, looked up with pure venom in her eyes. "You common prostitute," she hissed. "You thought you could con your way into our family?" Sophia backed toward the door, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. "Marcus, baby, tell them." But Marcus looked like he might be sick, staring at the photos of Sophia, or Sophie, with various wealthy men over the years. "If you're not off my property in 30 seconds, James said, his voice deadly quiet, "I'm calling the police. And trust me, you'll be seeing plenty of our lawyers either way." After Sophia fled, James turned to his son. The party guests were pretending to be absorbed in their champagne, but everyone was watching. "You brought this woman into our company," James said. "Gave her access to confidential information. All because what? She was pretty? Had nice legs?" "Dad, I didn't know." "Exactly," James roared. "You didn't know? Didn't check? Just thought with your..." He glanced at JJ and modified his language, "with everything except your brain. You're fired, Marcus. Clear out your office by tomorrow." "But Dad..." "And that apartment you're living in? Company property. Find somewhere else to live." Victoria, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly turned to me. "Tasha," she said, and for the first time ever, her voice held genuine emotion. "We owe you an apology. A significant one. You saved our company from God knows how much damage." James nodded solemnly. "We were wrong about you. Very wrong. You've proven yourself more worthy of the Reynolds name than..." He glanced at Marcus, "others." 3 days later, Sophia was arrested at O'Hare, trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. The evidence I'd gathered, combined with what Reynolds Industries lawyers found once they started looking, was overwhelming. She was facing serious fraud charges and massive fines. Marcus, I heard, was staying at a friend's condo while he looked for a new job. No other financial firms were eager to hire a man who'd been fired for such catastrophic negligence. It's been 6 months since James Reynolds' birthday party changed everything. I'm sitting in my new apartment, not as luxurious as the one I shared with Marcus, but perfect for JJ and me. The Reynolds family gave it to me as a token of appreciation for saving their company from Sophia's schemes. "The least we could do," James had said, handing me the keys. "After everything, well, you understand. The apartment is in a nice neighborhood, close to good schools. JJ's room is decorated with superhero posters, and my little home office overlooks a park. It's not a penthouse with lake views, but it feels like home in a way the luxury apartment never did." Marcus moved to California last month. He calls JJ every Sunday at 7 p.m., like clockwork. Their conversations are short. JJ's still too young to talk long on the phone, but at least he's trying to be a father, even from a distance. He never asks to speak to me, and that's fine. Some bridges stay burned. The biggest change has been with the Reynolds family. Victoria stops by at least once a week, usually bearing gifts for JJ and, surprisingly, for me too. Last week, she brought a beautiful orchid for my windowsill. The real shock came when Victoria and James invited my parents over for dinner. I was nervous. The last time they'd all been in the same room was at my wedding, where the class divide had been palpable. But something had shifted. I watched in amazement as James asked Dad about his years on the force, genuinely interested in his stories. Victoria and Mom talked about gardening, exchanging tips about growing roses. Sarah, Victoria said to my mom at the end of the evening, you and Tom raised a remarkable daughter. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. We always knew what Tasha was capable of, Mom replied with quiet dignity. Sometimes it just takes others a while to catch up. Life isn't perfect. I still have days when I miss the man I thought Marcus was, when I worry about JJ growing up with a long-distance father. But then I look at my son, happy and healthy, playing with his grandparents, all his grandparents, and I know we're going to be okay. Last night, I found JJ looking at an old photo of Marcus and me from our wedding day. Do you miss Daddy? He asked. I sat down next to him, pulling him close. Sometimes, I said honestly. But you know what? Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes it goes wrong before it goes right. The important thing is to stay true to who you are. Later, as I tucked him into bed, I thought about how far we'd come. From the simple accountant the Reynolds family once scorned, to the woman who saved their company. Sometimes the happy ending isn't the one you expected. Sometimes it's better.